to the Fantasy Football Fanalist Podcast, presented by Fantasy Data. Here's your hosts, Billy Muzio and Bradley Stalder.
Welcome to the Fantasy Football Fanalist Podcast. I apologize for the delay. I am on a mobile phone and a laptop, so I'm trying to do my normal setup here. It's my son's birthday. I'm over at the coast and had a little bit of technical difficulties, so I apologize. So excuse me if I'm looking back and forth quite a bit tonight. I'm trying to manage the normal screens from a mobile device, so it's a bit of a challenge. So first thing I want to talk about tonight is, of course, injury news and analysis. So I'm going to pull up my notes. Just bear with me here. Let's start at the running back position. So we have, of course, the biggie. It looks like Mitchell is going to be out as of right now. It looks like we're actually finally going to see the Trey Sermon show. So Kyle Shanahan, or as I would like to call him, Kyle Shenanigans, has been touting all week that Trey Sermon has been great. I don't think that you can say anything else when you are down that many running backs. I think you have to, praise anybody that's going to be on the field for this offense, regardless of who it is. If it's Mitchell, which I doubt, but if it's Sermon or even if it's some of the practice squad, they're going to get meaningful reps. So regardless of the player in the position, you have to start a San Francisco 49er running back if they're going to be on the field, because whoever it is going to be looking at some significant touches in an upside offense that's going to be scoring, against this Green Bay defense. So make sure that you're starting Trey Sermon if he is in doubt the starter, which we're expecting, and of course if Mitchell is out as well. Tevin Coleman, non-COVID, I should say, illness has been ruled out for week 3. This is great, especially if you are, an owner of the Jets backfield and you took Carter late in drafts and you expected him to kind of earn the starting reps as the season progressed. It's happening sooner rather than later. And looks like we're finally going to start to see more of the Michael Carter show, which is fantastic for fantasy purposes because he's the most dynamic back in this backfield. So I would say start Carter with confidence. We're starting to see him involved in the passing game. We're seeing him involved on the field. So I am excited to see Carter on the field and Tevin Coleman out. So Deandre Swift still questionable, but I expect him to play here. He's kind of been on this questionable list all year, and we don't expect him to do anything but play. Josh Jacobs is, of course, doubtful for week 3. So against the Dolphins, fire up your Drake shares again and any other pass catchers that you have in this Raiders offense. Darrell Henderson is a game time decision. So I would just be mindful if you have anyone else that you could start over him. I would, especially against this Buccaneers defense, which is, the top rated defenses against the run in the NFL. They were last year, they're again this year. So I would say be very hesitant to start Darrell Henderson if you don't have anybody else. Saquon Barkley is not on the final injury report here. Going up against the Falcons. So we saw him with an 80+% snap share last week. It looks like we have a fully healthy Saquon Barkley, or at least near full health. And I would expect to see his normal usage starting week 3. So I would say if you have been sitting him, I would say feel free to start moving him into your starting lineup, especially as we start seeing these injuries kind of amount to these fantasy teams. Let me pull my notes here again. Bear with me. I'm on a cell phone and on a iPad. Sorry, not laptop. And I'm running off of no Wi-Fi either, so it might be spotty. Carson Wentz is expected to play here week 3 against the Titans. I would just be cautious. I think there's better options, probably even on your waiver wire. Derek Carr's still out there, or even if you have a Daniel Jones out there. Depending upon the league you're in, you may even have a Fields out there. I would say look elsewhere, and I would not be starting Wentz this week. Lamar Jackson is questionable for week 3, but I expect him to play. So I would just be, you're firing him up regardless. It's against the Lions. So I would be throwing in Lamar Jackson regardless, as long as he's on the field. Davis Mills, actually, I know the game's over, but I want to talk about Davis Mills. Davis Mills completed 19 of 28 passes. In what we expected this game to be a blowout. And up until, the second half, it was a pretty close match. So I'm excited to see what Davis Mills does. It seems like every single year Tyrod Taylor gets a starting job. He loses it to a rookie quarterback and never gets it back. So I would say, watch this throughout the weeks coming up and see what happens here with this Houston Texan quarterback situation. Ben Roethlisberger is limited. And we do expect him to play, though. We have no Deontay Johnson, though, so just be mindful that we're going to have one less weapon in this offense and probably see a little bit more Najee Harris, a little bit more Chase Claypool, and a little bit more Juju. Let me head over to the wide receiver position. I'm pulling up my notes, so bear with me. Make sure this doesn't fall out. So we all know that Antonio Brown is going to be missing this week with COVID. So make sure he's out of your lineups. If you are desperate, you could, potentially start a Scotty Miller or a Tyler Johnson. I think there's probably better options on your waiver wire or in your on your bench than those two. But if you are that desperate, like if you had a Judy team and you had also all these wide receivers who have been hurt, I would say still look elsewhere. But if you have to, Scotty Miller could be a potential dart throw. Leviskus Chanult, no injury designation, so heading into the weekend, which is surprising. We all kind of anticipated him missing this week after the injury last weekend. So to see him shed the injury designation is good news for fantasy purposes. But still, his usage has been alarming. It's been concerning. I would say that as projected, and you know me, I've been touting it all offseason, was Marvin Jones is the number one in this offense. We've seen him score at will right now, and Trevor Lawrence and him seem to have a connection. So I would say if you do have Leviskus Chanult, I would look at other options on your team, and I would not feel confident starting him this week. I already mentioned Deontay Johnson will not play against the Bengals, so hopefully you have other options. He's been a target hog, so if you do have Juju on other teams, if you're not a Deontay Johnson owner, so I would say you're going to see an increase in targets for Juju. You're going to see an increase in targets for Chase Claypool, and I would say also Najee as well as some more runs. So Najee has already been leader in the NFL in the running back position for snap counts. So, we're seeing 100% week 1 until like 94% week 2. So I would expect somewhere in the middle. I would probably say closer to 100% this week with Deontay out. So I would say just be cautious. If you don't have another receiver, I would say you probably need to start searching the waiver wire if you haven't already, but Deontay Johnson is out, so make sure you make note of that. T. Higgins is also doubtful for this weekend with a shoulder injury, so this matchup will be without arguably both ones on these offenses. Let's say T. Higgins is probably the 1B, 1A to Jamar Chase, however you want to decipher that, but both these wide receivers will be out for this game. We have Darnell Mooney, who's questionable for week 3. He is expected to play, so I would say start him with confidence. He saw, he's been seeing a lot of snaps. He had 100% snaps in week 1, which was one of 2 receivers. So he's been on the field a lot. Starting with confidence, we saw him targeted a lot. I think he's a tremendous breakout candidate this year, especially once we start seeing Fields on this field. Do I even mention Josh Gordon? We've seen a lot of Josh Gordon hype along there. I'm going to say, if you're even thinking about it, don't. Every single year we get sucked into this. I'm in the best shape of my life. I've gone through rehab, whatever it is. Stay away from Josh Gordon. He's not playing. He's 30 plus years old now. He hasn't been fantasy relevant in several years. So even if you are desperate, there's better options out there than Josh Gordon. Amari Cooper said he's going to be good to go for week 3 against the Eagles. I'd still be cautious. Every single time he faces Slay, he seems to be shut down. So if you are an Amari Cooper owner, I would say just, make sure that you're going into the week without high expectations. You're not going to see the 20 plus points that we normally see from Amari Cooper, especially against this defense where he struggled against Slay. And I would say that Amari Cooper is probably more of a wide receiver 2 this week than a wide receiver 1. I would not be starting him with confidence. I understand that a lot of teams are already getting injury riddled, so if you're forced to, by all means, go ahead. But I would just say lower your expectations for Amari Cooper heading into the week. Let's take a look at the tight ends here. Okay, my notes are loading. 1 second. Evan Ingram is questionable for week 3 against the Falcons. He has put in limited work all week, watching tape in practices and even some of Dr. Chow's information. You could tell he was favoring his better leg. And we have to be mindful that calf injuries do have a lot of recurring injuries. So just be cautious throwing him in your lineups. If you have other options, I would. If you're desperate at the position, go ahead and throw him in, but just be mindful. It's very possible that we could see a re-injury here in week 3 with Evan Ingram coming back. Anthony Firkser has already been ruled out against the Colts with a knee injury, and we haven't really seen much of these tight ends do anything in this offense. His role's already been split between Swaim, so I'm not starting Swaim, so I'd probably look at options like we saw Doyle going on the waiver wires this week. That was on one of our top 10 waiver ads. If you're desperate at the position, so if he is on your waiver wires and you're in need of a tight end, I'd probably look that direction. Take a look here. I think that's all I have for tight ends. So I want to make sure I don't miss any notes. I do not. Okay, let me pop back over now to the show sheet here. Bear with me. See if we have any comments. While you're waiting, if you have any start-sit questions, feel free to. You might see double of me because my screen just glitched out. So, yeah, you're going to see 2 of me now in a second. So bear with me here. So we do have a question, so I'm glad I hopped back over here. First question is, do you think KJ Osborne is going to keep this production up? It's hard to say. He's been hyper efficient. I really like KJ Osborne. I think he's a talented wide receiver, and it seems to be that these Vikings seem to be able to find talent at the position. We've seen them, find Thielen, undrafted free agent. We saw Diggs be around 5 wide receiver that was added and excelled in this offense. Jefferson was selected later in the first, and he was outperforming other first round picks. So I would say KJ Osborne could easily keep it up. He's drawing lesser coverage. He's drawing the third cornerback, if not. He's drawing the third cornerback as the other cornerbacks are covering Thielen, as they're covering Justin Jefferson. So we've seen him be hyper efficient. I would expect that to continue. If you're desperate position, I would say start him. I started him last week in a start 3 wide receiver league with 2 in the flex position. So you're starting 5 wide receivers essentially in a PPR league, and I threw him in. We had the deep touchdown. So I would not count on a deep touchdown like that every week, but he's been hyper efficient, and I like his talent. So I would say if you are in a desperate flex need, I would say feel free and confident to throw him in. So again, if you have any other start-sit questions right now, please go ahead and ask, because I'm bouncing back and forth. I want to try to answer these as much as I can, especially with access on the phone right now. And then I'm going to take a look at the PrizePicks entries, let you know my favorite lines and my entries and what I threw in. Okay, I don't see any other questions coming in. Wait a couple minutes. I still have a few of you guys watching, so If I don't see any more start-sit questions, I'm going to head on over to PrizePicks now. I'll bounce back again. So if you do have any start-sit questions, throw them in there. I'll rock and roll, and then I'll come back and be able to answer those start-sit questions for you. All righty, PrizePicks, time everybody's been waiting for. Everyone loves the PrizePicks entries. Last week, I actually didn't do as well as I have been in the past. Dalvin Cook just missed his line. And we had Fant just miss his line by less than 10 yards. Cook missed it by less than 10 yards. So I only went 1 for 3 last week, which does not pay out. So unfortunately, last night I hit a 4-pick parlay, so I'm happy about that. So this week, let me go to my entries. If you're just joining us, again, sorry, I'm on two systems right now as I'm on a vacation house over on the coast in Oregon. So a couple of my favorite entries here. Jared Cook over 3 receptions. So this week we get pretty easy matchup. It's going to be a shootout, I think. So I do expect a lot of passes from this offense, and Jared Cook's been involved. We've seen him be the kind of third option, fourth if you count Eckler. So in targets, we've seen actually Mike Will lead the team in targets. We've seen Keenan Allen, and then we've seen Eckler, and then from there Jared Cook. So everyone was always wondering who's the wide receiver 3 in this offense. Is it going to be Palmer, which is what we expected? It doesn't matter. The wide receiver 3 is irrelevant right now in this offense. It's Jared Cook in the passing game that is kind of emerged when we thought he was going to be washed. So he's been fantasy relevant. If he is in your waiver wires, Adam, I doubt he is. But I do like the PrizePicks line for three receptions, and I'm taking the over for this week. Deandre Swift, 35.5 receiving yards. He's crushed this line both weeks, and he's been battling that growing week 1, week 2. He seems to be the second option behind TJ Hawkinson in this offense. So I'm going to say with confidence, take the over on 35.5 yards and receiving yards for Deandre Swift. Tyson Williams, 59.5 rushing yards. And I know people have concerns with Tyson Williams, but when he's on the field, he's averaged 6.8 yards per carry. He's been dynamic. He's definitely the best option on the ground in this offense. Yes, his pass protection has been horrible. I mean, we saw him, miss a few key blocks, caused the fumble at the end of the game. They lost that game. But when he is on the ground, first and second downs primarily is what we're seeing, he's been very effective. I mean, he's looking quick. He's looking elusive. He's looking fast. So I would say, 59.5 yards, definitely doable. He's only been seeing 8 to 10 carries a game, but, he's been averaging, nearly 7 yards a carry. So I am going to say against this defense, I'm definitely going to take the over here on Tyson Williams. So that's 3 overs in a row for me this week again. And for the 4th week in a row, I'm going to have 4 over. Sorry, for the 3rd week in a row, I'm going to have 4 overs. My last over is Odell Beckham Jr., 49.5 receiving yards. Jarvis Landry is out, and Odell Beckham is finally coming back. And I'd say he is going to be the number 1 in this offense, without a doubt. We've seen them target the tight end position over 50% of the time. I think that changes this week. They've only been targeting the running back position about 14%. So I would say Odell Beckham, 49.5 yards, should be a slam dunk. I'd be surprised if not. So those are my 4 picks this week. Again, Jared Cook over 3 receptions. Deandre Swift over 35.5 receiving yards. Tyson Williams over 59.5 rushing yards. And then Odell Beckham Jr. over 49.5 receiving yards. Let me head back over here to the show and see if we have any more questions. Looks like we have another one here from Alan. Thanks for the Osborne answer. Do you like Pollard over McKissick and Moss? Ooh, that's a tough one. Moss has been the goal line back, but Pollard has been electric when on the field. He's actually on a fantasy points per per target and per carry basis has been outperforming Zeke. I would probably say I'm starting Pollard over those two just because of a couple of reasons here. One, he's been seeing the field a little bit more consistently. And two, he's just more dynamic. I mean, we see him with a breakaway run. He's been involved in the passing game as well, where McKissick is purely a passing game option, purely 2-minute drill, purely third downs. Moss has been, pretty consistently just goal line and short yardage. So I would say start Pollard here, slight lean to Pollard. And if you're in standard, I would say I'm probably going Moss. But if you're in a PPR or half PPR, I'm going to be leaning Pollard here. All right, folks. Well, if you have any more questions, go ahead and throw them out here. I'm going to be wrapping it up. It's just a short podcast tonight. Again, I'm at the ocean here in Oregon, my son's birthday. So I just wanted to throw out a short podcast for everybody. I wanted to, keep tradition on and do our Friday live. So if you do have any final questions, feel free to ask them now or forever hold your peace. We'll be back on Tuesday with Bradley. That's going to be our normal 6 p.m. podcast, Pacific time. We'll cover, the weekend. We'll cover the Thursday night preview. And then we'll give our bold predictions as well as our score for the game. Alan still here. He says, awesome, thanks. In PPR, people still play standard. That's what I always ask. I say, I don't know who still plays standard, but it's out there. I get standard questions all the time. PPR, I'm definitely going to lean on the Pollard side. Well, folks, thanks for tuning in. It was a late podcast. It was a short podcast, and it was delayed. So I want to say thanks for all of you loyal listeners. If you have any last start-sit questions, if I wasn't able to get to them or I missed them, or if you're logging in late and you were expecting me to still be on, shoot me a message on Twitter. That's at FFMuzio, MUZIO. And I would be more than happy to answer those for you going into Sunday morning. So I'm going to be finishing up my Fantasy Pros rankings here tonight. I'm delayed this week. I got my Thursday ones in before the game, but I'll finish them up here and be able to answer any of your questions for Sunday. So again, Twitter DM at FFMuzio. Twitter DMs are open. Be more than happy to answer your start sits for you. Thanks for tuning in, everybody, and have a good night.